In early September, police in Kigali discovered 12 bodies buried in the kitchen of Denis Kazungu. He's suspected of killing at least 14 people in total.
A rented house in Gashikiri, Kigali. Late night, 2023. Neighbors whispering of bodies in a pit in the kitchen. A motorcycle parts shop owner, friendly, polite, luring strangers from bars, vanishing them. On 5th September, police broke into that house and discovered a nightmare. 12 bodies buried in a hole in the kitchen in Busanza Cell, Kanombe sector. The suspect, Denis Kazungu, a 34-year-old Rwandan who would admit to killing 14 people. Most of them women, some bodies hidden, some victims alive and escaped. Lies, betrayal, horror behind ordinary life. He pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to life, but many questions remain. Denis Kazungu was born around 1989, 34 years old at the time of arrest. He lived and worked in Kigali, Rwanda. He ran a motorcycle spare parts shop. He had some previous arrests, accusations of rape, robbery, use of threats, burglary, forgery, but never condemned for major violent crime. Neighbors described him as quiet, reserved. He rented a house in Gashikiri, in Kicukiro district. A man living alone in one house, married or with family in another. He sometimes hosted visitors. Some women who came to his house left, alive, and later described fearful conditions. At least 3 women escaped from his house before his arrest. There were warnings. Neighbors reported disturbances, complaints of strange noises, or women not returning, but these were dismissed either as domestic disputes or issues with sex workers. Local leaders were informed, but evidence seemed ignored. Kazungu had also been arrested earlier, July 2, 2023, for robbery, rape, threats, but released on bail pending further evidence. That earlier release would later be seen as a missed opportunity. He began quietly in Kigali, Rwanda, around April 2022. Denis Kazungu was renting a house in Gashikiri in the Busanza Cell, Kanombe sector. He ran a motorcycle spare parts shop. To many, he seemed like a quiet, reserved man. But there was something odd about that house. Lights at odd hours, people visitors late at night, whispered rumors of women entering, and some never returning or coming back in distress. Kazungu's method, according to his own confessions and testimonies gathered during investigations, was chillingly consistent. First, he would identify potential victims in bars or social gathering places. Women who were alone, perhaps drunk, perhaps trusting. He would talk to them, invite them to his rented house, the pretense, to continue the evening there, to help them with something, or simply to offer them shelter, drinks, companionship. Sometimes he used aliases. Neighbors later said he used different names to conceal who he was. Once inside his house in Gashikiri, things turned dark. Kazungu would rob the woman, take their money, phones, personal items, and then rape them. Physical violence would follow. In multiple testimonies, escapees reported threats, attempts to silence them, and beatings. One woman escaped after being assaulted, managing to flee when Kazungu stepped away. Another fled when neighbors heard disturbance. The escapees told how he threatened them, sometimes physically, sometimes verbally, to force silence. After assault and robbery came murder. According to the Rwanda Investigation Bureau, Kazungu admitted that he killed many of his victims in that home, then buried their bodies in a pit he had dug in the kitchen of the same house. In one incident, a body pit was discovered covered with a concrete slab. Underneath, authorities uncovered 12 corpses. He later said there were 2 more bodies whose remains weren't yet located, making 14 victims in total. Most of the victims were women. 1 man was among them. Neighbors' testimony fills the gaps between dry numbers. One neighbor claimed she had saved 3 women who escaped from Kazungu's home. They arrived at her house bruised, fearful, with stories. How they were taken from bars, how they were assaulted and threatened, how they begged to leave. These women described Kazungu as calm, manipulative, sometimes charming, until he became cruel. In one case, they said he hit them with blunt objects, forced them to obey threats, kept them isolated. Members of the community observed odd behavior. Girls entering his house, sometimes 2 in a day, some never seen again, or returning later in distress. His landlord complained he stopped paying rent. He denied access to the house, claiming various excuses. Leaders at the local cell sector were told of disturbances, missing persons, cries, but many dismissed them as fights, or with sex workers, or minor domestic issues, or rumor. It was only when unpaid rent built up and the landlord sought to evict him, and when local leaders attempted to enter the house and found resistance, that suspicion reached a tipping point. Denied access, reports being ignored. Then the police got involved. When officials entered, they found the pit, the slab. They lifted concrete, excavated, and uncovered bodies in various states of decay, some fresh, some decomposed. Evidence recovered included victim personal items, phones, identification, clothing, some stolen goods, items that indicated robbery. Forensic assessment confirmed sexual assault in several cases. Kazungu admitted rape and robbery. He used threats. He used different names. Evidence of identity theft surfaced. He even used one of the murdered man's identity documents in interactions or transactions, according to neighbors. One escapee's testimony was especially influential. She said she had been brought in by Kazungu, robbed and assaulted, but in a moment of chaos, she ran. She called for help. She hid. She escaped. Her trauma, her bruises on ratas, her fear, matched what investigators later found in the escape reports. Through all this, the pattern was clear: lure, isolation, robbery, rape, murder, concealment. The consistency over time, the witness reports, the items stolen, the aliases used, the use of a pit in the kitchen, all point to premeditation. Kazungu was careful to conceal evidence. The pit was covered, the house, in some respects, secluded. Neighbors intimidated or too afraid to press too hard. In one neighborhood account, a local elder said that when local authorities tried to approach Kazungu's house, he would refuse them entry, sometimes claiming that a snake, or cobra, was inside the house to ward them off. A bizarre excuse, but effective in delaying inspection, community oversight. Meanwhile, police records show that in July 2, 2023, Kazungu was arrested on suspicion of rape, robbery, theft, use of threats. But because of insufficient evidence, or lack of cooperation, or inability to link claims to bodies, he was granted bail. That delay gave him more time, more victims, more horror, more concealment. Then, in early September, the landlord, frustrated with unpaid rent and fearing something was seriously wrong, alerted authorities when Kazungu denied access to his own rented home. They discovered the pit, the slab, the 12 buried bodies. Kazungu confessed to killing more than those found. The trail leading to his arrest began with a dispute involving his landlord. He had not paid rent for several months and denied access to the house. The landlord reported the problem, and local authorities inspected. During inspections, police found a pit in his house's kitchen where bodies had been buried. At least 12 bodies in that pit. Kazungu later confessed there were 2 more whose bodies hadn't been located. In total, 14 victims. Denis Kazungu was arrested in Kigali. The Rwanda Investigation Bureau, RIB, led the operation in Busanza cell, Gashikiro sector. Police recovered evidence from his home: the pit, bodies, items belonging to victims, clothing, potential tools of violence, forensic materials. Victims were found in advanced stages of decomposition in some cases. One of the male victims' identity had been used by Kazungu as stolen identity to cover tracks. Kazungu voluntarily entered a guilty plea in Kikukiro court. He admitted to murder, rape, robbery. He also acknowledged luring victims from bars, using different names, impersonation, hiding evidence, bodies. He did so without obvious emotion in court, smiling perhaps only briefly, largely calm. He said he could not fully explain his motive, but claimed that some of the victims had infected him with HIV, a statement that prosecutors rejected as inconsistent with evidence. He also said he had committed the crimes alone. Bodies in the pit, many women, at least one man. Decomposition complicated identifying some victims. Clothing, personal effects, identification documents were recovered in some cases. Some bodies had signs of sexual assault, some also robbing, signs of threats, evidence of robbery and rape among the charges. Police testimony and investigations revealed that Kazungu used multiple aliases to conceal his identity and avoid detection. He may have used the male victim's name for impersonation. He reportedly forged documents. Some women who survived told how they escaped physical harm. They described being drugged or threatened but managing to flee. Their accounts were crucial in verifying the scale of the crime. These testimonies helped build the case, giving personal detail to patterns that otherwise would just be cold numbers. Denis Kazungu was charged with 10 counts, including murder, rape, robbery, forgery, concealment of corpses, impersonation. The prosecution argued these were not isolated incidents, but a pattern of premeditated murder, rape, theft, concealment. He faced the Nyarugenge Intermediate Court in Kigali. He was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. Additionally, fined $1 million. After sentencing, his defense team filed an appeal in March 2, 2025, arguing that Kazungu had shown remorse and full cooperation with authorities, which should be considered mitigating. The High Court in Kigali denied the appeal, upholding the life sentence. The court stated that the severity, premeditation, cruelty, and the number of victims outweighed mitigating claims. The case reminds us that ordinary masks can hide monstrous crimes, that vulnerability often comes from being marginalized, that society must listen to escapees, rumors, landlord complaints, that forensic work, exhuming bodies, forensic pathology, victim identification is vital, that legal systems must balance swift justice with thorough evidence. Thank you for watching this full look at the Denis Kazungu case. If this story haunted you, if you want more global cases spotlighted, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so these stories make it to the light.